A fireball across the Siberian sky. Witnesses said something was wrong with it. It didn't move like a meteor. It moved like it was steering. The military found wreckage. Scientists confirmed it. Then they made it disappear. For 115 years. Hidden. Classified. Forgotten. But what if I told you we finally found proof? What if I told you governments are still actively hiding it? What happened next changed everything. And it's about to change how you see reality. An indigenous Evenki hunter stood 65 kilometers from the explosion that morning in 1908. What he witnessed didn't match anything in his world. He didn't describe fire falling from the sky. He described something else entirely. He said it was a machine falling from the sky, a machine with controlled descent. He watched it slow down. He watched it adjust its trajectory mid-flight. And then, a calculated detonation. Precise. Intentional. Like nothing nature could create. His testimony was documented, written down, preserved, but dismissed by Western science as mythology, as superstition, as the ramblings of an indigenous witness who couldn't possibly understand what he was seeing. But then the Russian government arrived, 19 years later, in 1927, and they found something in that remote forest, something that confirmed his story, something that shouldn't exist on Earth, something that proved the Evenki hunter wasn't confused. He was telling the truth. So they classified it, sealed it, and spent the last 115 years making absolutely certain no one could access what was really found that day. Until now. June 30th, 1908. 7:15 in the morning. Siberia was silent. Nothing but endless forest stretching for thousands of kilometers in every direction. Pine trees, birch, spruce, silence. That was the world before that moment. And then the sky changed. Multiple witnesses reported seeing a fireball. But this wasn't like any meteor they'd ever heard about. This wasn't some distant streak of light. This was close. This was real. This was wrong. The object was traveling horizontally across the sky, not descending at a steep angle like asteroids do, not plummeting toward Earth like something losing control. It was traveling parallel to the horizon, like something flying, like something being piloted. One hunter, positioned 65 kilometers away from the epicenter, was knocked down by a shockwave so powerful it broke tree branches above his head. He was on the ground. The blast lifted him. He felt heat, intense heat, even at that distance. Even in the early morning, the explosion registered equivalent to 1,500 Hiroshima bombs, 1,500 times the force that destroyed an entire city. But here's what witnesses reported that should have made every scientist on Earth stop and question everything they thought they understood. The explosion was controlled. Witnesses described the object slowing down in the final moments before detonation, adjusting course. But some accounts, documented, recorded, preserved, mention hovering briefly before detonating, staying still in the sky for a few seconds, then releasing its payload. A meteor doesn't hover. A meteor doesn't adjust course. A meteor doesn't choose the perfect altitude for maximum devastation. A meteor just falls. A meteor just hits. A meteor doesn't calculate, but something else does. 80 million trees fell that morning. 80 million. In a radial pattern outward from one central point. The destruction was so complete, so perfectly geometric, that it could only have been one thing. Intentional. Deliberate. Calculated by something with intelligence and purpose. When scientists finally investigated in 1927, 19 years after the explosion, they found something that changed the entire trajectory of the investigation. Or rather, they found things, thousands of them, hundreds of thousands, microscopic spheres, embedded in the bark of trees that survived the blast, suspended in soil samples, found in sediment layers, scattered across the blast zone in a pattern that suggested deliberate dispersal, not random, not scattered by chance, distributed with precision. When researchers analyzed these spheres, examined them under microscopes, tested their composition, studied their structure, what they found violated everything they thought they understood about natural phenomena on Earth. The spheres contained nickel, iron, cobalt, Ratios that don't occur naturally on this planet. Not even close. Not in any natural formation ever discovered. The composition wasn't just unusual. It was impossibly precise. Like it was engineered. Like it was manufactured by something with advanced understanding of material science. Soviet scientists classified their findings. They documented the composition. They documented the distribution. They documented the impossibility of the evidence. And they filed it away. But here's what really terrified the scientists who made this discovery. Here's what made them understand they were looking at something that didn't fit any known natural phenomenon. The radiation signature at ground zero didn't match any natural explosion we've ever recorded. Not a comet, not an asteroid, not a meteorite. It didn't match the signature of any event in Earth's history. Instead, it matched the theoretical output of something controlled, something guided, something that operated at extreme efficiency with a specific purpose, a directed energy source. One Soviet scientist, Dr. Libor Vitek, published findings suggesting the radiation pattern was consistent with an artificial source of extreme energy concentration. Not natural, not random, artificial. His paper was immediately censored. He was reassigned. His research was buried. His findings were classified at the highest levels, and he was told never to discuss it again. But the evidence was there. The data existed. The impossibility. And governments knew exactly what it meant. Let me explain something about impact events. Every single meteorite impact in Earth's history left a crater. Every one. The Chicxulub impact 66 million years ago, the one that killed the dinosaurs, left a 180-kilometer crater visible from space. You can see it from orbit. It's permanent. It's massive. It's undeniable. The Barringer crater in Arizona is so deep that if you dropped an object in the rim, it would take 5 seconds to hit bottom. 5 seconds of falling. That's how deep this crater is. That's how violent the impact was. Meteor crater in Canada. Sagan crater in Mongolia. Manicouagan crater in Quebec. Every single one leaves a massive, permanent scar on the Earth's surface. Craters don't disappear. Craters don't get hidden. Craters are geology. They're permanent. But Tunguska? No crater. Zero. Nothing. No impact scar. No geological depression. Just devastation radiating outward from an epicenter in empty forest. Trees flattened. Forest destroyed. But no hole in the ground. For decades, this absence of crater was explained away by mainstream science. A comet made of ice, they said. It vaporized completely before impact. It dissipated in the upper atmosphere. It never reached the ground, so it never created a crater. Sounds logical, right? Sounds rational. Sounds scientific. But comets leave signatures. When a comet enters our atmosphere, it creates specific chemical traces, specific reactions, specific atmospheric phenomena. Scientists can detect these. We've seen it happen with other comets. None of that happened at Tunguska. No chemical traces. No comet signatures. Nothing that matched what we'd expect from a comet impact. Then in 1993, an expedition, a classified expedition with military clearance, discovered something that shouldn't be there. A geometric void. Not a crater. Not an impact depression. Not a natural geological formation. A void. A perfect geometric anomaly in the subsurface at ground zero. It was discovered. It was sealed. It was analyzed. And then it was classified so heavily that researchers requesting access were simply denied. No explanation. No reason. Just access denied. But here's what makes this geometric void genuinely terrifying. Genuinely impossible to explain away. The object didn't detonate on impact. It detonated at exactly 2,150 meters above the forest floor. Not higher, not lower. Exactly that altitude. Precise, calculated, intentional. Do you understand what that means? 2,150 meters is the exact altitude where maximum devastation occurs, while avoiding deep crater formation. It's the optimal detonation point. Perfect height to destroy everything on the ground while leaving minimal impact evidence. A natural phenomenon doesn't calculate that. A meteor doesn't choose its detonation altitude. A comet doesn't optimize its impact parameters. A natural disaster doesn't think. But something that's programmed does. Something that's guided does. Something with intelligence and purpose does. This wasn't an accident of physics. This was engineering. This was intention. This was a deliberate, calculated decision made by something with advanced understanding of physics and destruction. 30 years after the explosion, scientists began studying the trees that survived the blast. They examined the growth patterns. They studied the genetic structure. They analyzed the rings. And what they found was medically impossible. The trees at ground zero showed genetic mutations, significant mutations, consistent with intense radiation exposure, but not the kind of radiation a natural explosion creates. When you expose biological matter to radiation from a natural source, from a meteor impact, from a volcanic eruption, it creates random, chaotic damage. The mutations are unpredictable. The damage is scattered. The effects are disorganized. But the mutations in the Tunguska trees were different. They were patterned. They were specific. They suggested targeted, directed exposure. The radiation signature matched the theoretical output of a controlled energy source operating at extreme efficiency, a source that understood how to modify biological matter at a cellular level, a source that could direct its energy with precision, with purpose. And then something happened that violated every principle of forest recovery and biological resilience. Something that should be impossible. Vegetation returned to the blast zone far faster than it should have. Trees grew 40% faster than normal growth rates for Siberian forests. Root systems developed in patterns never documented in any forest ecosystem on Earth. It was like the explosion had chemically altered the soil in a way that accelerated growth, enhanced it, modified it. The soil composition changed. The nutrient levels shifted. Something in that earth was different. Something was enhanced. Something was optimized for rapid regrowth. Radiation from a natural event doesn't do that. Radiation from a natural explosion doesn't improve soil quality. It doesn't accelerate plant growth. It damages. It destroys. It kills. But radiation from a controlled source with specific elemental manipulation, that does exactly that. That creates this pattern. That produces these results. The only explanation that fits the evidence, the only logical conclusion that accounts for all the data, is that something understood exactly how to modify an ecosystem at a molecular level. Something that didn't just destroy. Something that deliberately altered the biological landscape for specific purposes. Scientists who publish these findings face the same fate as the others. Their research was questioned. Their methodologies, their conclusions were dismissed. And eventually, their work was classified. Connect what we know. Let me lay this out for you step by step. A fireball that moved horizontally across the sky. Not falling, not descending at angles. Moving parallel to the horizon. Moving horizontally. Witnesses describing a machine. Not fire, not light, a machine. Something with structure. Something with purpose. Something built. An object that steered. That adjusted course, that modified trajectory, that made deliberate directional choices, an explosion at precisely calculated altitude, exactly 2,150 meters, not random, not by chance, calculated, optimized, no crater, no main body, just microscopic metallic spheres with impossible composition, with ratios that don't exist in nature, with precision that suggests manufacturing, controlled radiation signature, not chaotic, not random, directed, targeted, efficient, genetic mutations in plants suggesting directed energy, not random damage, targeted exposure, controlled application, geometric void in subsurface, not a crater, not a natural formation, a perfect anomaly, a geometric impossible, accelerated ecosystem recovery, soil enhancement, biological acceleration that violates natural principles. And here's the part that keeps physicists awake at night. Here's the part that governments have hidden for 115 years. This wasn't a meteor strike. This wasn't a random collision. This was a demonstration. Someone or something came to Earth. They didn't come to destroy us. They came to show us something. They came to send a message. They chose a remote location. Siberia, uninhabited, far from population centers. They calculated the perfect altitude. They detonated with enough force to be unmissable. Enough to prove capability. Enough capability to trigger global awareness if governments hadn't buried it. But not enough to trigger total planetary catastrophe. Not enough to actually harm us. Not enough to provoke war. They send a message, crystal clear. We can reach you. We can destroy. We understand your physics. We understand your planet. But we're choosing not to. The Evenki people who witnessed it didn't call it a meteor. They didn't call it a natural disaster. They called it a message from the sky gods. They called it a warning. An ancient people, an indigenous culture. They understood what had happened. And for 115 years, every government on Earth has been keeping that warning secret, protecting it, hiding it, making sure you never found out, making sure you never understood what really happened that day. The Soviet government kept the site restricted for decades, heavily restricted. Independent researchers were forbidden. Expeditions required military clearance. Scientists who published findings contradicting the meteor theory, the safe narrative, the comfortable lie, were reassigned, silenced. Their careers ended. When the Soviet Union fell in 1991, researchers believed something would change. They believed the classified files would finally be released, that freedom of information would finally reveal the truth, that after 83 years, the cover-up would end. They were wrong. The FSB inherited the files. The archives were transferred, not released. They were moved from one vault to another. The classification remained. The secrecy continued. In 2024, the Tunguska site remains heavily restricted. Independent research is forbidden. The Russian government denies access. International requests are refused. Why? Why keep hiding this? The official explanation is always environmental protection. We need to protect the ecosystem. We need to preserve the forest. We need to study the regrowth naturally. Environmental protection. Environmental sensitivity. It sounds noble. It sounds reasonable. But environmental data doesn't require 115 years of secrecy. Environmental impact studies are published. They're peer-reviewed. They're shared with the international scientific community. They're part of the global knowledge base. Tunguska is hidden, protected, guarded, militarized, which tells us one thing and one thing only. It wasn't about the environment. It was about evidence. Evidence that shouldn't be examined. Evidence that shouldn't be verified. Evidence that contradicts the official story. Evidence that proves something came to Earth. Something intelligent. Something beyond our understanding. And they're still hiding it. Remember to like and subscribe for more contents like this.